days of Women Blaze Trails. It's hosted by Exploring by the Sea and in partnership with the Explorers Club as part of their year-long celebration to honor women of the Explorers Club. And we have a very special one joining us today. Stella Diamant, at the age of 21, she visited Madagascar and witnessed firsthand the delicate balance between rural fishing communities and the marine research and resources. And that fueled her to stick with it, stay there, and into a career as a conservation biologist. In 2014, she founded the Madagascar Whale Shark Project. And since then, her team has identified more than 4,000 juvenile whale sharks off the northwestern coast of Madagascar. That group has never been seen before. They've never been observed anywhere else in the world. Her team also works in tandem with the local communities there. And I'm excited to welcome Stella to the stream. Hello, welcome, Stella.
Hi, Brianna, how are you?
Doing well. So where are you tuning in from?
I'm in Belgium currently. Madagascar has been closed for a while now, so I'm just working from here remotely for now.
Well, I'm excited to learn about your experience underwater with these giant creatures, and also about how things have been impacted in the last year because of COVID, and how the people there are doing and how the species are doing. So looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you. So I'm just going to try the share screen thing. Hopefully.
Yeah, we see it here.
Oh, wait.
There we go, full screen, it's working.
It's just not the beginning. There we go.
I know you have some amazing underwater photos. And are these all your photos?
Yeah, well, not this one. This is me on it. It's one of my favorite pictures, and I really wanted to show it because, yeah, it really represents the dream life I've been really lucky to live for the last few years. But I'm going to explain a bit more how I got there and the challenges we face and what's up next.
Great.
Brianna, you can see and hear me fine, right?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Cool. Let me start. So I'm Stella. I'm from Belgium. I'm currently in Belgium now. And since 2015, I study whale sharks. Actually, I founded an NGO called the Madagascar Whale Shark Project. It's now a registered foundation here in Belgium. And since, nearly 5 years now, this is what I do. But before that, it was all a bit different. So I just want to tell you a bit more about my career as a biologist. So that's me, I think in 2013. So I trained as a biologist at university. Initially, I wanted to be a vet. So I kind of went into biomedical, but then very quickly I realized I needed to be outside and I needed to be in nature. So after my degree, I did some work on baboons in Namibia. That was where this photo was taken. It was amazing. It was very exhausting. And then I also worked on different expeditions and in field seasons, mainly in conservation, but specifically this one was in marine plastics. I actually crossed the North Pacific where we took some samples from the gyre there where all the plastic accumulates. And that's when I realized I really enjoy leading things. And I'm quite keen to set up my own organization one day, but actually I didn't really know where or when. But just a few years before that, actually, just after finishing my bachelor, I went to Madagascar for the first time, like Brianna explained. That's me at age 21. I was dressed as a coral reef. It was for a little presentation in Madagascar. So there I volunteered for 6 months with WWF. It was just a first experience for me in the field. After my degree, like I said, I was sick of the lab and I really wanted to experience something different. So I kind of signed up and got the chance to go really live off-grid with a fisherman community, and there I completely fell in love with Madagascar itself. It was really difficult, and I realized, there's a lot of work to be done in conservation to make it work for local people. So after that, I went to do work with the baboons and all of these other things, but it really stayed in my head, that I wanted to go back. So just to show you where Madagascar is, because I'm not sure how familiar everyone is. So it's in the Indian Ocean. So kind of, bottom of Africa, but on the other side in the Indian Ocean. So just a bit about Madagascar. It's a really poor country, and most people depend on fishing for a living. There's some tourism, but now, especially with COVID, a lot less of it. And it's incredibly biodiverse, and it has amazing biodiversity, both terrestrial and marine. And while most people know about the chameleons and the lemurs, there's all of the sea. It's got a huge coastline, and you have whales and manta rays, and also whale sharks. So actually, how the whole thing happened, I went back kind of in between two jobs when I was 24 to visit another part of Madagascar, and that's where I saw my first whale shark. And I was blown away by how beautiful they were, how calm, and mainly the fact that no one studied them. So I'll touch back on this later. Let me just explain you why whale sharks are so cool and worth all our attention currently. So first of all, they're endangered. That means they're, well, I'll talk a bit more of this later, but that means they really need, attention and work. They're the world's biggest fish, so they can range from very small when they're born. They're about 50 centimeters long, so that's kind of like this, and then they can grow to actually 20 meters. Sadly, not many sharks that size are ever seen these days due to all the threats they face, but they're actually a fish and not a whale, despite of their name. They're very slow growing. They take 30 years to reach maturity, which is estimated around 9 meters. So you can imagine it's a really long time for them to reach that size. And also, there's so many other things they can encounter that can harm them in the ocean. I'm not sure you can see this video. That's one of the regular whale sharks we see. It's called Sirius. So actually, whale sharks, they're plankton feeder, and they feed at the surface that we see. They also probably feed at the bottom of the sea, but we're not there, so we don't see that. And as you can see on this video, they really kind of filter just plankton or small bait fish. This behavior is quite typical of what we see in Madagascar. So they will kind of come to the surface and just feed whatever's there, and they work kind of in cohesion with other fish that you can see on this video, the tunas jumping. So they're not dangerous at all. They're completely harmless, and that makes them, a great target for ecotourism and all of that. But of course, that means they're at risk, right? So when you have people swimming in the sea, wanting to observe these surface behaviors from the whale shark, that means there's boats around, there's engines, not often, off. So this is a picture, I think, from Mexico that a colleague took, but whale sharks can get really scarred by the boats, and that can sometimes, be fatal to them. Another threat, of course, is plastic. So that was just, a few years ago, but these things happen all the time in cetaceans, but also in whale sharks, because they filter feed, they're not selective in what they eat, not like a dolphin, for example. So whatever is floating at the surface, in this case, it was a plastic bag, but it can be really anything, even microplastics they will swallow. And it can be really dangerous for them. And that's another big threat for them, is being caught as bycatch. So all the fish we eat is being caught from massive fisheries, often that happen offshore. And because whale sharks are migratory, even if we see them in shallow waters in Madagascar, when they leave the area at the end of the season, because they're often seen with tunas and all these other fishes, they can end up in the big fisheries, and it's so much work to take them out of these nets, where there's often other fish that they just end up being caught. So these are just a few of the threats. I'm not going to go into this much longer because it's a bit depressing, but all these things mean that, according to the studies done all across the world, the consensus is quite clear that whale shark populations have halved in the last 75 years. So really, really worrying to know what's going to happen next, because like I said, this is, growing very slowly, and they have these very specific kind of way to feed, and that makes them very vulnerable to things happening at the surface. So how I ended up studying whale shark was, like I said, when I was back there a few years ago and I saw my first whale shark, I realized there's actually growing tourism in the region. There were a few operators. This is the one we work with now a lot. It's one of our partner operators. And these people were taking tourists out who came, to visit Madagascar to swim with the whale sharks. So just from doing that, actually, people were taking pictures with the GoPros, and all of that data, all of these pictures actually data we can use as scientists. And that's a great thing with whale sharks, is that they're actually very difficult to track and to follow, but they're very easy to study in a very simple way just by looking at their spots. So how I started the project was basically getting in touch with all the operators there, asking, can we train some people? Can we train some of you guides? Or can we have tourists just, taking pictures of whale sharks whenever possible, really? And because they were readily going in the water to swim with them, it was quite easy actually to collect data. So we kind of established a bit of a standardized protocol, like it's done elsewhere. And suddenly we were collecting all of this data, whenever the whale sharks were there. So this is actually called citizen science. So it means you kind of rely on people that are not trained scientists, but they can very easily collect data. In our case, doing snorkeling or freediving, like Fanny on this picture, who's a long-term volunteer. She comes back every year now. And basically how it works is we use photo identification, it's called. So it's kind of a very well-known method for identifying animals. It's used for other animals, for the tails of the whales, for leopards, for zebras, for giraffes. And what it needs basically is to recognize the same part on the animal. So in the case of the whale shark, it's on the left side, as you can see, and it's just behind the gill and above the pectoral fin. And that area in every single whale shark is different. So even though they look very similar with all the dots, actually they all have this unique signature. And from just taking this picture, of course, it has to be, well done, like on this one, with little light reflection and all of these things. But just by looking at these pictures, as you can see on here, we've got 3 different sharks. It looks quite similar, but if you look at the detail inside the red boxes, it's very different. So just from doing that and relying on algorithms, on certain platforms like Wildbook for whale sharks that we've used from the beginning, we can actually really easily recognize the whale sharks. And that way we know, which one was seen again, which one is coming back. All of the population dynamic, really, we could figure out. So by doing that year after year, we reached quite a high number of whale sharks. And of course, we also look at, the unique characteristics of each shark. So some have scars from previous boat encounters, or maybe other interactions with other sharks. So thanks to all these little kind of life scars, we can recognize them easily as well. And of course, all the whale sharks have names. They have kind of funky names, but it's easier for us to remember them. Of course, all of that then goes into data processing, and that takes a long time. And that's why we have a kind of a dedicated volunteer group. Each year we recruit people. You have to speak French if you want to come out, because it's a bit remote. And then at the end of the day, people will sort through the data and help me to recognize the whale shark. So we've run this for a few years now, and it's actually really helped to move on. And thanks to that, it's actually 400, not 4,000, as Brianna said, but it still is really big. We've identified 400 sharks since 2015, just from using that method, which is, not hurting the sharks. It's very easy to learn. Anyone can do it. And yeah, it's been fantastic to just work that way with people who are not trained as scientists initially, but really want to participate for a few weeks of the year. And it's helped us tremendously. We also do a few other things on the project. I'm just going to be very brief about this because there's a lot going on. We deployed satellite tags, as you can see on this picture. This is me swimming alongside Shanti, one of the bigger sharks, a few years ago. So we just deploy a little satellite tags. It's a bit, it can be dangerous for the sharks, but really it's okay because it's just hanging by a little rope. So it usually just detaches, but the shark doesn't feel anything. It looks a bit weird, but the shark is like a mosquito bite for them. And then whenever the shark is at the surface, the satellite tag is going to transmit its GPS location, and then we'll know where the sharks are when they're feeding. So thanks to that, this is just one of the pictures from our first publication, and it shows you the island in the middle, Nosy Bay, is where we operate from. And basically all the red is showing you where the whale sharks were feeding. So as you can see, there's kind of a really concentrated area of red around the island. So that means it's a really important area for them because that's where they feed. You can see the rest is kind of, there's some orange and some places there is nothing. That means there's no whale shark activity. So what we're doing now is using that data to collaborate with local organizations to kind of protect, hopefully one day, this habitat. You can see the 2 green boxes, they're already established marine protected areas. So now we're trying to protect the remaining bits in between so that whale sharks are, protected, and there's boat speed regulations and things like that when they're feeding. We've also introduced a code of conduct for whale sharks since 2017. So it's just a set of very simple rules that both tourists and the guides and the captains, all of them, they have to follow the rules. It's very simple. The main ones are: do not touch the shark ever, because they can react and stop feeding. Maintain a distance between you and the shark, but also the shark and the boat, so that there's no collisions, and have the motor off. And then we've introduced this other rule, which is just 1 boat per shark. And actually implementing this, it's now in the process of becoming a law in Madagascar very, very soon. So it's been a lot of work to do that. But just these simple rules will actually really disturb them less and make the experience a lot more enjoyable for people in the water, because it's less crowded, and also for the shark, it can just feed undisturbed and people can have a nice encounter with them. So that's been a big focus of what we do in Madagascar, is to keep supporting local initiatives in conservation, because it's a developing country and it's heavily relies on the tourism for income. We're really trying to come up with initiatives and ways to grow forward in a sustainable way, so that people can still benefit from the whale sharks in an economic way, but at the same time the whale sharks can continue to use the area and feed. Finally, one of the last big things we started is kind of a community program. So it's just educational sessions, both in schools and at the beach every Saturday. And we do beach cleanups. We have a local educator called Bruno who leads that, and it's just basically raising awareness about why this habitat is so important for whale sharks and why it needs protecting, but also from local people, so they better understand what's at stake for them. So this is the end of my presentation. Really, my message for all of you out there is to protect what you love. For me, it's been really showing me the way in what I wanted to do, because I'm passionate about these animals. And the more you understand and the more you educate yourself about what you love, actually you realize there's so many things you can do, whether it's to cut on plastic, to eat more sustainably. These are just small steps you can take on a daily basis. But try to think of really what you love and what you care about, and what you can do with your skills to help them. That's it from me. You can follow us on social media. It's been a bit of a slow year. Last year we couldn't go back to Madagascar because Madagascar shut its borders since March, so we didn't have a season last year, and the whale sharks were fine. They were undisturbed and feeding even more than before. But our team there has suffered because of no tourism. So we're trying to help with what we can. We could organize still some days at sea for the kids, so that was great. And yeah, it's the rainy season now, so we're waiting for that to pass, and then we'll go there hopefully in July, August to continue our work. And there's plenty more projects happening, so yeah. Thank you so much.
Wow, great. That's so exciting. We're getting lots of questions coming in through the chat here, but I'm going to start it off. Can you tell me, what is it like to be in the water with this kind of giant creature? What are they like? What is their behavior like?
It's always difficult for me to describe because I think it's very personal, but it's very calming. You don't get scared. At first, it's quite intimidating because they're very big. I mean, they're like a bus, so it's kind of, you don't expect that. But they go quite fast, actually, even though it looks like they're not really moving much. They swim really fast, so you kind of have to keep up with them. And no, it's amazing because you, at least for me, you forget about everything. It's just you in the moment with a wild animal that is at the surface, kind of allowing you to be there. So it's very special.
Wow, I would love to join. So I'll take a question here from the chat. So Chelsea is asking, you're in Belgium now, and how has that altered your research, and what have you been able to accomplish from afar? Any internet tools?
Yeah, so I kind of forgot to say, but basically the sharks are only there a few months in Madagascar. So how I operate usually is that I'm in Belgium or elsewhere, just kind of doing data processing and funding applications and all the boring admin stuff that no one tells you about, which is really taking most of my year. And then usually the rest of the year, so the other 6 months, I go to Madagascar, and it's kind of full on with all the work we do. So last year it's been actually really useful because after 4 field seasons, you have so much data, like so much data. We had more than, I think, 1,000 encounters. So it's the work we usually do at the end of the season, but I wanted to publish that work in a scientific journal, so I've really spent time to process it properly, and we have a few papers now nearly submitted, so in review. So it's been really useful for that, but that's fun.
Right. Well, congratulations on that. We'll stay tuned to hear. So we have some comments here in the chat. Joe says, "Blaze on, ladies." We have a one I'll bring up here because it's not in English, so I'm not sure exactly what it says, but I think it says, "Good work, Stella." We have someone else saying, "Interesting work. Thanks for sharing." That's from Judy. Fallon asks the question, "What is your favorite type of shark?" I think we might know the answer to this.
Whale sharks, obviously.
Do you see any other sharks while you're out there? Any other wildlife?
No, very rarely. So yeah, I've kind of skipped a bit the bad news about Madagascar because I want people to remember how incredible of a place it is. But it is very overfished, and most of the other sharks are, they're not there anymore, really, and wow. So we don't see many. Yeah.
Wow. All right, we have another question from Jamie. So Jamie asks, how many whale sharks are seen, and is there a season to swim with them? Can you swim with them? What's the season?
Yes, the season is from September to December in Madagascar. Every site in the world, so there's quite a few sites, it's about 30 plus sites like Mexico and Galapagos and Mozambique. Really check if you do go there and swim with sharks, because they have different seasons based on which hemisphere, and the feeding season in Madagascar it's from September to December, but it varies in other places. Yeah, and yes, you can swim with them.
Can people join your team? Can they become citizen scientists? How are they able to do that?
There's 2 ways. Either you come on a tour with one of our partners. You can go on our website or message me or just look up what we do. And there's actually a list of operators that operate with the code of conduct. So we kind of advertise them because it's being done the right way. Otherwise, you can apply to come out with us. It's for a few weeks. But like I said, we really need people to speak French, because it's just logistics of the field. Otherwise, it's difficult to survive without the French.
Well, I'll have to brush up on my elementary school French class. Yeah. So I have a question about working with the local communities there, and what kind of knowledge do they bring that maybe is different than the scientific research that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting and quite challenging as well, because again, with the language, so actually you have an official language in Madagascar, which is Malagasy, which is different. So just the logistics again of trying to collect data. There's also dialects, yeah, people often see them out fishing, and they think they're bringing wealth and fish, so they're thankful for them. But at the same time, once they go in a net, it's just this whole mess of untangling them, and if not, maybe they have to kill it, and they don't want to make that decision. So it's kind of, we're still learning more about this as we go on, and we actually have a new study that we've done in collaboration with a local NGO on really perceptions of people. Because like in most countries, you have all these ancestral beliefs about fish and about what they mean to people, and so it's really, really interesting as we learn more about this, but it's a long process.
Yeah, really interesting. All right, let's see what else we have here from the chat. Thanks for the information. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, we have lots of viewers tuning in from around the world. And now I have a couple questions about how you do this work, because you have so many different methods. You are using satellite technology, you're using citizen scientists working with tour operators. How do you fund this work? Because there's a lot of different methodologies that you're using.
That's the main issue of this whole project, and a bit of a heads up for anyone who has a cool project idea is very difficult to get funding. So we partner with different organizations who have PhD students who come and collect data with us, or they can get funding, like all the satellite tags and the kind of cool tech we cannot fund ourselves. So we usually apply for grant proposals and we get kind of money or awards that way. But especially for whale sharks, the technology isn't there yet in terms of tags, so you kind of have to use a few different things at the same time, and very often the tags detach, so they end up in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and there's no boats to go that far, so it's kind of always kind of a risk to tag them. And then the citizen science thing, the great thing is there's no funds really. It's just the training we deliver there, and then we ask a small contribution from people who want to volunteer with us, and then they just kind of go out on the boats. So that's worked out really, really well for us. And then, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the main issues still for me is to personally earn a salary from all of this. So I'm kind of juggling multiple side jobs, and yeah, it's not always easy, especially when we have no tourism, then we kind of suffer a bit this year. Right. But it's such worthy work that I try my best to keep doing it.
Yeah, well, the pictures show that it is really incredible work. And if you had any advice to any young girls out there who would like to blaze the trail that you're blazing, it sounds like there's some challenges that you have to encounter along the way. What advice would you have for them?
I have lots. The first thing would be, don't listen to everyone who is telling you don't do it. I would say do it, but stay informed and look after yourself. For me, it was a bit of a test to, I kind of forgot to look after myself, and I worked so much, and then at the end you're just really exhausted all the time. So there are some things you need to listen to, but often people in higher positions than you, especially men, will tell you, I've had it happen to me a few times, that you have no experience, you're too young. Why would you do that? Someone else did it. So no, trust your intuition, and the more you read up on stuff, you will be in a good position to know if it's worth your time or not. But don't hesitate. Like I know so many people who were kind of hesitant of, maybe I should start this, but it doesn't mean if you start a project you have to let go of everything else. I think it's kind of this image we have of people in conservation. You can also keep your job, or maybe go part-time, or there's many ways to transition from one to the other without kind of giving it all up at once, which I did, and it's really exciting, but maybe not the best way. So lots of advice.
Yeah, lots of advice. Well, I'm going to pull up some banners here that you can follow if you'd like to learn more and connect with Stella. There's lots of activity, really cool photos to take a look at. So follow Stella and the Madagascar Whale Shark Project. And thank you so much for joining us from Belgium, Stella. And